All right, I'm just getting right into it after doing Chapter 7. Hopefully, I'm going to be able to do Chapter 8 and 9 in one go. I'm just going to call it here. Let's get into it. Such exciting chapters. Maybe two of the coolest ones. And they're going to be kind of smaller as well. Now, we go right into it with this Gethel, who was Hood's herald, getting slashed across the face. And he's basically been fired from Hood for not being able to recruit this mortal sword. So he's on his own. He doesn't have a job. He's just like Buke after losing his job with the merchant, and now he needs a new situation. So he kind of takes his ball and goes home. He goes back into the Omtos Falak Jagat warren, which is a warren that is cold and of ice, and he is summoned by the crippled god, who has some work for him to do. He's going to hire him. And remember, the crippled god plays on people's insecurities. He does this with Gethel right now, who might be feeling a sort of way. Who knows if this is his first time he's been fired. Probably doesn't feel good to be fired from Hood. And he lets Gethel know that he is this new startup house that he wants to bring into the deck of dragons, or the deck of cards, or whatever. And he needs his own herald. He needs someone to be his spokesman to go out on his behalf. And he also needs a king to run his household. And we will find out more about that. So he lays down his plans, and really he's letting Gethel know, but he is also kind of letting us know as a reader some things to kind of ground us a little bit, because we've been pulled all these different ways. But we have seen lots of people kind of taking new bosses in this book. We have, Buke with the Necro Boys. We have Gruntle leaving his old boss. We have Lady Envy kind of begrudgingly following Krull. It's something that we will see kind of over and over, which is very interesting. But anyway, he lays down the plan, the basic plan, which we've already heard before, but the plan to kill Byrne, to break the chains, and take over the place. So Gethel's like, sure thing, I'm your boy. And so we jump to Krupp in a new scene, and he's kicking butt with playing dice with the bridge burners, and everybody, including Quick Ben, is super suspicious about Krupp. So everyone knows something's up, just like in the other book. Something's up with the guy, but he's just so clever, and they can't really nail him down with anything. And then we get this next scene, which is one of my very favorite scenes. And it has to do with Whiskey Jack getting an invite to hang out with Animander Rake, which, wow. After their first meeting, when he showed up in the middle of that gathering and the tension that was there, this would maybe seem like a lot, but he's going to offer, they're going to have some drinks together. Now, and Animander Rake talks actually about how he really respects Perrin, and he really sees something in him, which kind of gives Perrin some extra street cred, in my opinion. If he needed more of that. I know the bridge burners don't necessarily see that in Captain Perrin, at least yet. I think Whiskey Jack sees something in him, but really interesting. And finally, after something like 2,000 pages into this series, we finally get more of a background story of the bridge burners through Whiskey Jack's eyes. He is telling Animander Rake about this. And the coolest part of this story, in my opinion, other than it has some things about Fiddler, who was there, and he had this broken fiddle, and that's where he got his name. I guess I should have guessed that. Hedge is there, I believe Picker's there. And he's recounting this story that centers around Quickben, especially, who was a Cadra mage protector in Aran, which was central in Deadhouse Gates, this last book. And before that, though, before the things that happened in Deadhouse Gates and before the things that happened in Gardens of the Moon, Quickben was one of 12 mages, at least, that are all part of this larger plot of what's going on. Remember, the Empress was going to kind of do this culling, especially targeting the mages and things and the sorcerers, which makes me wonder Lassine's real stuff that's going on with her, and how tied she would be maybe with the crippled god, especially if they're going to be targeting the mages and sending people to the Odotaral camps. And, that just shows how, even though maybe the crippled god has this central core thing that he's trying to do, he has all these different tools to make that happen. Really cool. But anyway, Whiskey Jack and his group are the group assigned with rounding up Quickben and this group and of mages and wipe them out. Callum, which is this awesome assassin from the last two books, was a claw, which was kind of like the Empire's secret service sort of thing. And he is going with Whiskey Jack. Since Whiskey Jack is not from that area, he's kind of being the guide to the bridge burners, who are kind of not really, they haven't really become this really close unit yet in the same way that they would become. They're a little bit green still. I don't know to what extent, but they're just not who they were. So he is going to go be with them to track down these mages. And again, we have Fiddler with the broken fiddle. He steals some dude's helmet that has this property that it's not able to get hot, so it keeps him cool. And it's kind of a funny thing that shows some of his personality. And then they kind of track them into this desert. Remember from the last book, I think this is the Rakari desert or something. I might have that wrong. But this desert area that they track them into kind of has this Bermuda Triangle kind of reputation around it. Like when you go in there, you probably won't get out because you don't know where the sources of water are. And luckily they are tracking these mages, and it has taken them directly to all these different sources of water, or else they would just be toast. And as they're going, they are seeing one by one these withered, dead mages fallen along the wayside, and thinking, well, there goes one by one by one, and it is slowly tracking them until it is going to get to this one left at the end, Quickben. And it is so cool because these mages, who are priests or acolytes, I believe, of all these different gods, so they have access to all these different warrens and things, are doing this. We find out that they're doing this melding thing that we have found with Sari and Silver Fox and whatnot, and they are putting all of their life source or magic, whatever, into Quickben. I don't know if that means that he also has their thoughts, and he's kind of there are a whole bunch of them in one, or if it's just Quickben and he's just kind of resorbed their power. But it would be very cool if he also has their memories and their personality and things like that all kind of playing in him. But he is kind of absorbed all this. He's almost like this Harry Potter Horcrux, all these different mages all put into himself. Sorry for the Harry Potter reference, but it's something that I think we can all a lot of people could recognize that. And he's kind of withered there, waiting for them. And they say, "Hey, you can cut the act." And he kind of shows that he's just fine. He's just fine. Nothing was going to happen. And we actually find that him and Callum were going to kind of turn on the bridge burners and flee or whatever, and maybe leave them in the desert. Callum would kind of lead them in weird areas. We find that in ancient Rome. We have, if you look up Crassus, there was this. He kind of had this guide, kind of leading his legions into the Parthian area, which was another kind of desert location. And he was this rich Roman general with this personal legion, and he was kind of fighting in the east, and he was kind of conquering that area as much as he could. And he had this guide kind of pulling him into a no man's land that was bad, and they ran into these horsemen that they revealed. They took off their cloaks, and they had this shining armor. And the Roman legionaries were, they had this shield wall, much of the way that they kind of fight in this book. The Malazans are kind of trained to fight that way. In the Faithful and the Fallen series, we see that. In a lot of these series, we see this phalanx. But they couldn't deal with, at least in this Roman thing with Crassus, and when he died, they couldn't deal with these horse archers that could just peg him apart with these massively heavy arrows that could go through shields. And they just picked them all apart. They took Crassus, and they stole the sorry to go on these tangents. I love Roman history. They stole the Roman kind of eagle things that go on the top of their standards, and that was like a major thing when you would lose that, because it's tied into their religion and stuff. And if you could rescue those or take those eagles back, you were like a hero in Rome. Germanicus was one of these big heroes. He took those, he found those back. He got those back from some of the German tribes. But anyway, Crassus was taken, and he had he was very greedy, the richest man in Rome, and so they killed him by pouring molten gold in his head, something fitting. And we kind of find that it sounds like this Callum was going to do this with this bridge burner crew. Another time when they were going to be kind of left for dead. And this happens over and over and over. It sounds like this happened a couple times. This happened with Pale as well, but they just keep going on, and this earns them some cred with both Callum and Quickben, and also unifies this whole group of bridge burners that weren't supposed to make it. And they all become this kind of solidified, awesome group. And I want to go back to the first book eventually. But we get that. It's so cool. They become loyal to each other. And even when Animander Rake hears this, he's all kind of worked up in this amazing story that he just heard, and even he kind of shows them some respect, and he kind of conveys some respect about this. Now they bring up the topic of Silver Fox, and Animander Rake makes it clear to Corlat, his number 2, who is kind of the kind of a guide also to the Maiba, kind of taking care of her a little bit, but making it clear that no one, especially Calor, this former King Calor, none of them are to touch Silver Fox, even if that means bringing down the might of the Tistandi and their warrens on this guy. And then, so we don't even know what the extent of his real power is, but he's making it very clear that she is not to be touched. We get to Maiba, who is once again being tormented by these dreams that she is young, and in these dreams she knows that it's fake, and she wakes up and then she's just this, she's an old woman, even though she's probably 20 years old, really. And she runs into Kruppa. And he gives her this copper jewelry, which copper is supposed to be this first gift from the gods to kind of help to alleviate some pain and stuff like that. So she has this jewelry that also is supposed to be taken from the barrows of this original group of Rivi spirits. So, I mean, of course, Kruppa has those. And also of note, I love that he also kind of wanders these dreams. So he knows, he's seen people's dreams, which is very odd and whatever. So then we get back to Captain Perrin, and a lot of this is just setting up some things to happen. And he is on this mission to accompany Trotz to the Whiteface clan. And the goal is to recruit these massive fighters by having Trotz challenge their champion of choice and to really stake his claim. And holy moly, is that an amazing chapter coming up soon. Perrin gives Picker and some of them the task to stay behind. They're to stay behind and wait for Quick Ben to show up, and when he shows up, to also kind of accompany them to this Barghast gathering that's happening. Now we get to Quick Ben, and of course he's doing his own thing. He's investigating and wandering through all these warrens, which so cool. And he finds himself in Hood's Warren, which, remember, we had this Hood's Herald, and it actually does seem like it's in good condition relative to the other ones that he's checked out. He finds these runes on the floor that get more and more kind of complicated and widespread. He's trying not to step on anything and change anything. And he finds this Barghast stick spirit thing that has been trapped there for a long time, for who knows how long. And it has just been trapped there. They have this little conversation. And for one, we find out that the Barghast were descended, or at least related, but I think descended from the original Imass. And were specifically, these Barghast specifically were the seafaring Imass that were going around hunting the Jagged that were all over the place. And when the ritual was called to kind of make them into bone boys and bone girls, they didn't come. They were late, or they just stayed where they were. And they held on to their old traditions, which kind of sustained them for a long time. And I'm sure they have evolved in some ways, but it's so cool because if we want to know more about the pre-Imass dudes and gals, though they probably have changed a bit, we can find that in the DNA of the traditions and customs, probably in the Barghast, even though they have forgotten a lot of who they were and whatnot. I bet it's probably within that, even in the traditions and things. I'm sure they are still holding on to a lot of that. At least it seems like it is implied. And yet it's so interesting that, because even though they are tied to that, they aren't able to ascend themselves. Their spirits and things are gone. They are, they don't have this tie to the spiritual kind of realm in the same way that, and they just don't have this. They do, but they don't have this foundation of really where they come from. And for this forgotten history and things, they just don't have this real growth because they are resistant, I think, to move away from their customs, which, yeah, we've seen examples of that sort of thing. And Quickben frees this stick spirit thing with this rad magic, and because Quickben's got a Quickben. And that's the end of chapter 8. So since that didn't take too long, let's just bounce right into chapter 9. And I think this might be my very favorite chapter in some ways of this entire series. And it is just so cold. But we get back to my favorite group with Talk and his crew, and they're on their way north towards the Panian Domain. And as they're going, Talk is obviously getting a little bit more freaked out by the whole situation. He's heard about what is going on. There's some rumors of that and whatnot. And he doesn't think he's going to make it through. He's having some doubts. Even if he's going to stay close to them, how long is he able to really live through this? Lady Envy's trying to kind of tell him, no, don't worry about that. But he doesn't have the same power as Lady Envy, or the same way, the same abilities of the Segula, or the same dust power of Tool. He's starting to kind of, he wants to get back to the Malazans, but going north through the Panian Domain doesn't seem like a good idea to him. Talk and Envy, Lady Envy, have this little discussion about the Talani Mass and how they have outlived their spirits, their original spirits, and it's a sad moment for Talk, who starts to think about the possibility that when the Talani Mass move on, there will be no spirits or anyone to be there to catch them and to embrace them in that moment when they've moved on. This saddens him on Tool's behalf, because he considers Tool to be a friend. And again, waterworks are being prepared with these two guys. A Kachane, whatever, hunter shows up. One of these dino dudes with the swords. And the Segula just show how awesome they are. They dispatch it by slicing off its arms, and just so easily. The third does this surgical, quick, and just adept maneuver and decapitates it in just this perfect way, not wasting a single movement. And Tool is like, what the crap? I have never seen anything like that. I don't think I can do that. And the first sword of the Talani Mass can't have an equal. I gotta fight him. And Lady Envy's like, oh, come on. And she kind of just flicks her wrist and she's like, what? You can't be doing this now. We are right in the middle of this thing. Tool, you cannot fight him. And so she kind of flicks her wrist or whatever and snaps her fingers, and Mock just gets put into this deep sleep right at this important juncture of what's going on. They keep walking on, and they get to this hamlet that has all these destroyed buildings and things. And they find this one building that has this pyramidal structure of copper kind of sticking out the top of it, which is a temple. A temple towards this Panian Domain group. So it's like, wow, this is... okay, things are about to get real. And before approaching it, Lady Envy shrinks down the Baljag and Gareth. That's his name, right? We have a couple G names, but the dog, which I love this dog. And just so they're not so threatening, and Talk is completely freaked out approaching this temple. This is when I got so excited. They knock on the door. Clearly, Lady Envy is not worried in the least. The door opens. There's this creepy, shaved, pale, weird dude. Inside, it reeks of decay as they go in. there are these bodies on the wall with hooks through their chest. It's really grotesque. And this is one of those things where I would not be able to stomach watching this in a TV show or a movie, probably. But in a book and things, this is dark and it is hard to read some of these things, but it really lends to the fact that they need to figure out what the heck is going on. And of course, Talk is about to hurl. He might have already hurled. And the people, they make it know that these are the people on the hooks that built the temple. And once finished, they were given their reward, which was expressed by them being killed. It's kind of a weird form of mercy in this weird, freaky Panian cult. So they're brought into this reception area of this freaky temple, and a black-clad armor guy whose name is Seer Domin Cult. So I just want to break that apart. Seer Domin. We find out that it's the Domin is kind of linked to children in the same way that in some like cults or religions it would be like the fathers are the spiritual leaders and the children are the followers. So he is like a follower of Seer Cult. Cult. K-A-H-L-T. At least that's how I see it. So when we see Domin, I didn't know what Domin means, but it sounds like the Panian Domin, it is also the children of Panian, which again, Panian is not only a jagged word, but a jagged name. So the followers of whoever this Panian is, which we can all make our guesses there, but I found that interesting. Where was I? Okay, so he welcomes them. He has this black armor. He's this great warrior priest. He's one of the most loyal and fiercest warriors that they have. There's a whole bunch of them within the Panian kind of empire, whatever you would call it. And so he's a dude not to mess with, and he's freaking Talk out again. And so he lets them know that he welcomes them, and he's got this freaky kind of blunt way about him. And he makes the note that he's surprised that he's got a visitor. Not many people come and visit the Panian temples, and certainly not a second time. But those who embrace the Panian faith receive their reward, and they will come to know just how much of a reward that really is. So they are there to visit this temple, and there are about 70 of these temples at the perimeter, at the very least, at the perimeter of this Panian realm that are built within the towns of these places that they go to. And it kind of just spreads their influence more. Lady Envy provokes them and kind of is playing with her food. It sounds like before doing anything, she's provoking this Seer Domin guy when they are offered meat, which we don't want to know what that meat is. She's like, oh, thanks. And she tosses it to the dogs, which is, she clearly enjoys this provocation. And this is a great insult to Cult. And he lets them know that, but she's not bothered by it. She kind of draws his attention to the Segula that are with her. Remember, the Segula have killed some of the priests who went to their island, and so he's kind of bugged by that. Lady Envy smiles at this guy, and he flinches, which makes you think not only is she like a perfect 10 out of 10, but it's more than that it's implied that she obviously has some more kind of sorcery going behind her charm. And she keeps saying, well, I'm just a woman. It's just the woman in me. But no, it's clearly she plays these games where she uses this to her advantage. But her personality and total lack of concern totally oozes from these chapters. They are invited to rest. They're in this totally hostile environment that is scuzzy and disgusting and hot, and they're just rotting meat and terrible. And she's like, yeah, let's go have a rest. I think I'm going to have a sleep. And somehow Talk wakes up. He's like, how did I even sleep through that? He's been force slept, and he wakes up to just screaming and violence and crashing and just walls smashing, and things are going down. And he goes to investigate. He sees that Gareth, this puppy, is massive and is basically chewing down 30 of these guys, like breaking down walls. We see that there's guys kind of boiled in these. I'll try not to talk too much, to pop into the microphone that much. We see that they are kind of being boiled by Lady Envy, the Segula, the middle one. I think Talk finds that cult Seer Domain leader who's supposed to be just this most deadly fighter. He has one wound right in his heart, and I guess it wasn't much of a fight at all. This middle Segula barely had to move and just parried a few things with blinding kind of accuracy and whatever, and got him right in the heart. And I love this pup, Gareth, and Baljag is there, but this puppy doesn't have his lovable nature anymore. Now he's like Incredible Hulk pup, just wreaking havoc on this thing. So she has picked her party well, and this is like another nuke just waiting to go off. I think this is much more devastating and dangerous to the Pani and Seer than whatever they are doing up north. That's just personally, and I think that is so cool. Let me see but even then, Talk is showing these serious doubts in continuing with them, and this kind of frustrates Lady Envy, because she's like, are you serious? After all this, you're still going to show all this doubt? She grabs his head and threatens him with a kiss, and we don't know what would happen if that were to occur. And we see Tool, our boy Tool, show up and tell them that there are some Kachane, I'm just going to call them Kachane hunters, on their way. In the next scene, we find that the Pani and Domin were once seafarers as well. And they used to just be these average people, now turned into these wild, fanatical, feral cannibals that I think are the same type of what we saw in the prologue of what happened in Calor's day when he was the king. So the same sort of thing going on. Talks with Lady Envy, is sick of being toyed with, tells her to stop playing her games. She's like, oh, I'm just a girl. She's like, no, stop it. And then she's like, oh, you're just like Animander Rake. He used to say that too. And that kind of shows why they probably split apart. She tells him that he needs to just relax and go with the flow like a leaf in the wind. Just go with it. Don't worry about it. And we will soon see how he will take that. Now, just to finish the chapter, we get to Bastion, which I believe is this extra, it's this other little city or town that is in this middle of the Embrasure, which is kind of what they call they don't call it a siege from their point of view. They call it them going in and embracing the city, which is this horrific culling. Just horrific. I can't even think of, I love history. And so a part of that is going and seeing some of the atrocities in our past. And there are some awful ones. We don't even have to go. We think it's in our far past, but we can just go to the 20th century to see some horrific stuff. But the scenes described here is awful when the Panions take over. And it's just this zombie-like mob of once normal people who are just moving like hordes of locusts for food. Like these feral psychos. And it is just so dark. And this was something where I frequently had to just kind of put down my book to just imagine what that would look like if someone were to do that in a movie, or what it would look like. And this is just another thing. I wouldn't want to watch this movie, but it is utterly compelling in this book and expertly conveyed. It expertly conveys the tone that I think Stephen Erickson really was going for. The people are starving in a way that makes them have completely feral natures. And we get this talk about the children of the dead seed that is like, what the crap? If you know what that is, you know how messed up that is. We have some wild ladies and some messed up dudes. And with this creepy necrophilic situation that creates this children of the dead seed. And it is nasty and awful and so compelling for the story. And the firstborn of that seed, an Anastar, I believe was his name. Let me just make sure I get that right. He has some mama issues because he is the firstborn from this mom who was the first crazy lady to do this, at least in this area. Let me make sure I get. Let me make sure I get his name right, because I'm sure he is going to come up a little bit more. You know what? I'm struggling to find you, Anastar, whatever the heck your name is. Here, I'll just check one more page. Yeah, can't quite find it, but he is kind of leading this horde, this mob. And they see Talk and Lady Envy in the group and point at them, and everyone freaks out, and they know that stuff is going down, and that's when Talk is like, "Yo, I'm joining the group. I'm not going to be eaten by them. It is either go and rape and kill and eat, or be raped and killed and eaten." And he's like, I'm going to that group. See you later, Lady Envy. And even though he is joining it, he's like, I don't want to be a part of any of that stuff, but I also don't want to be eaten. Okay? And she's like, what are you doing? What are you doing? I can protect you. But he says, like you said, or at least he thinks that, I'm going to be like a leaf in the wind. I'm going to just go with the flow. And they are heading north to the Malazans. I will join up with my group then. See you later. Going with the flow. And I think that probably, even though he has the intentions of just not getting eaten and maybe kind of finding a time when he'll be able to leave the group. I think probably a lot of people joined with those same intentions, thinking, I don't want to be eaten. But so I'll just join the group. I don't want to eat. I don't want to become a cannibal. I don't want to become feral. But I guess I'll join for now. And then it just changes them. But there's something about talk. There's something about talk where maybe, just maybe, I'm holding on to the fact that maybe he won't totally be changed, even though he will go through some stuff. So it's interesting that talk is joining the mob. And of note, just on this last page of the chapter, he calls to Lady Envy to kind of plead with her not to kill all this group. Remember, she had the choice to cut the knot, I think basically to destroy everyone, or loosen the knot and free people, something like that. I think that has to do with what he's saying. It might not be. But he has need of them still. Talk does, which is foreshadowing, if I ever heard it. He wants her just to kind of carve a path through, but doesn't want her to just lay waste on everything. And as he's going, he sees her immediately he can sense her sorcery just blasting away at all this stuff that's going on. So I don't know if that implies that she's having a tantrum or she's just protecting herself or whatnot, but they are going to he's joined the club. And he's now one of the Panian Tenescro, or whatever they're called. And it is horrifying. And that is, finally, we were able to get through 2 chapters in a much quicker time. I hope you're enjoying this as much as I am. Let me know. Consider subscribing if you haven't. Consider a like. I will have... Hopefully I can get through maybe 3 chapters on the next one. I love that the next chapters kind of follow one sort of, just like this one was all about Talk and Lady Envy and that group. The next ones do the same thing. So I think that'll make it so we can kind of rip through it. And I'll give my thoughts midway through the book in a separate video, because I know a lot of people won't like this kind of long-winded thing. But yeah, really, really enjoying it so far. And I will see you on the next one.